Ever wonder why the game changes after 40? For many men, the relentless chase for more, money, power, status, quietly fades into the background. What if true fulfillment isn't found in what you gain, but in what you let go of? Discover the profound shift that redefines purpose for men over 40. There comes a moment in a man's life, subtle at first but seismic in its truth, when the noise begins to lose its meaning. The world still hums with urgency, yet you feel no need to keep up with it. The race you once ran with such fire now feels like a distant echo. The chase, the proving, the endless pursuit of validation, it all starts to look like a game you no longer wish to play. When you were younger, motion felt like purpose. You mistook the noise of movement for the sound of progress. You wanted to be seen by women, by peers, by the world as capable, confident, victorious. Every glance that lingered, every message that landed, every conquest that fed your ego became proof that you mattered. But what you didn't realize then was that validation built on attention is the most fragile currency of all. It vanishes the moment you stop chasing it. Back then, women fascinated you because they represented something beyond reach. You wanted their admiration because it felt like confirmation that you were desirable, powerful, enough. Yet what you were really pursuing was reflection, a mirror to prove your own worth to yourself. The chase was never about her. It was always about quieting that invisible tension within you, that whisper that said, "You're only valuable when someone else sees it." But after 40, something inside you matures beyond language. The same pursuits that once ignited your energy now feel like distractions from your essence. You start to crave something quieter, purer, not excitement, but equilibrium. You find yourself drawn to peace the way a weary soldier longs for still ground. The need to conquer fades. The desire to understand takes its place. You notice how your presence feels different now. You don't speak to fill silence anymore. You speak when something must be said. You no longer rush to explain yourself or defend your choices. The fire that once burned outward now burns inward, controlled, deliberate, steady. And women sense it before you say a word. They can feel when a man has stopped seeking permission to exist. Your stillness unsettles them because it reflects a kind of self-possession they rarely encounter. It's not arrogance, it's sovereignty. You've learned that real power doesn't need to announce itself. It radiates from restraint. The younger man chases attention because he mistakes motion for power. The older man withdraws from the noise because he has learned that power is peace. Women instinctively respond to that distinction. When your emotional center no longer depends on external validation, your energy shifts from grasping to grounding. You become the calm her emotions orbit around. You begin to notice the psychology behind it all. When your energy reaches outward, she feels the tension. She senses you want something, but when your energy rests inward, she leans in unconsciously, drawn by the contrast. She may not understand why, but she feels it. The pull of a man who wants nothing, yet seems to have everything. And here lies one of life's quiet contradictions. The more you detach from the chase, the more magnetic you become. Because women are not drawn to desperation. They're drawn to composure. The more peace you protect, the deeper her curiosity grows. She wonders what world exists inside a man who doesn't need her to define his worth. That is the moment when attraction shifts from physical to psychological. She stops seeing you as one of many and begins to sense something unshakable in you, something she cannot manipulate, rush, or control. It's the rare stillness of a man who has learned to master his own emotions before attempting to influence anyone else's. And that mastery didn't come from luck or technique, it came from pain. You've lived enough, lost enough, and rebuilt enough to understand that peace isn't given. It's earned through endurance, discipline, and letting go of what once owned you. There's a kind of liberation in that maturity. You can walk away from what no longer aligns without bitterness. You can observe without reacting, feel without losing control, love without surrendering your self-respect. Every boundary becomes sacred, not a wall, but a declaration that your peace is no longer negotiable. And women sense that too. They feel the shift in energy when a man's focus returns home, inward, centered, whole. They notice how little external approval seems to matter to him, how his confidence doesn't fluctuate with attention. It's not that he's immune to attraction, it's that he's no longer enslaved by it. The irony is, this is when women become most drawn to you, because in a world filled with men chasing comfort, you've chosen command. You embody the rare energy of a man who would rather be alone than lose his equilibrium. You no longer seek to be understood, you seek to understand. And that presence, quiet, composed, self-contained, speaks louder than 1,000 words ever could. You finally understand that peace isn't passive, it's active mastery. The discipline of emotional control, the courage to be still when the world screams for attention. You no longer measure yourself by conquest, by how many approve, or how many pursue. You measure yourself by how little it takes to disturb your calm. And when you reach that point, when silence feels like power, when solitude feels like luxury, that's when you realize you no longer chase because there is nothing left to chase. You've already become the man you were running toward. You've stopped seeking validation because your life itself has become evidence of it. You no longer chase women because your energy now invites them. You no longer seek peace because you are peace. And when you reach that level of internal authority, every woman who crosses your path will feel it, not in what you say, but in the calm gravity that follows wherever you go. Because nothing is more magnetic than a man who has learned to protect his peace. When a man finally reaches that inner stillness, he begins to see how the world truly operates, not through noise or force, but through subtle exchanges of energy, emotion, and intent. He starts to observe what others are blind to, that most interactions are negotiations for control disguised as connection. Every smile, every silence, every text, delayed or answered, carries meaning. But the man who has learned to protect his peace no longer participates in these invisible power games. He simply reads them quietly, like a philosopher decoding the patterns of human desire. You start to realize that peace is not passivity. It's power in its most disciplined form. Stoicism calls it apatheia, a state where emotion exists, but never commands. Machiavelli would call it virtù, the ability to act with deliberate control amid chaos. Modern psychology calls it emotional regulation. But to the man who has lived through storms, it simply feels like freedom, the ability to remain himself no matter what or who surrounds him. You begin to understand that women, and people in general, are not drawn to the loudest energy, but to the most centered one. They instinctively seek stability in a world that constantly pulls them apart. When a man stands calm in the middle of emotional turbulence, he becomes something more than attractive. He becomes grounding. His steadiness becomes a mirror that exposes the instability of everyone else. And yet, this steadiness does not mean softness. It's not about avoiding conflict or seeking peace to please others. It's about embodying peace so fully that no one's chaos can infect it. It's a sharp kind of calm, the calm of a sword resting quietly in its sheath, aware of its power, unwilling to be drawn for anything less than purpose. You see this dynamic play out everywhere. In relationships, the man who argues from emotion loses authority. The man who listens with control gains influence. In attraction, the man who seeks validation loses value. The man who maintains self-respect becomes magnetic. In leadership, the man who demands obedience breeds resistance. The man who leads by presence inspires loyalty. Because all forms of respect from women, from peers, from life itself, are rooted in how well you command yourself. That's the eternal principle. The one who conquers his emotions controls the field. A woman's attraction is not random. It's psychological design. She is biologically wired to respond to emotional strength because it signals safety. When she feels your calm under pressure, when she sees your restraint in temptation, when she senses your clarity in uncertainty, something ancient in her relaxes. You become the quiet certainty in a world built on unpredictability. But make no mistake, this strength is not built overnight. It's forged through moments of restraint that once felt unbearable. The text you didn't send, the argument you didn't engage in, the attention you didn't chase. Each act of restraint was a brick in the architecture of your peace. You didn't know it then, but every time you held your ground against impulse, you were teaching your nervous system loyalty to calm. You were programming your power. The Stoics spoke of ruling the self as the only form of true kingship. They understood that no empire built on desire can last. A man may conquer nations, but if he cannot conquer his own reactions, he remains a servant to emotion. And so in silence, through years of mistakes, you built an empire of composure brick by brick, invisible to others, unshakable to you. The Machiavellian man, on the other hand, understands the strategic side of this same truth. He knows that composure creates leverage. He studies not only his emotions, but others. He sees how quickly people reveal their intentions under pressure. He knows that patience exposes truth faster than confrontation ever could. Where others rush to react, he waits, because waiting is how power gathers its force. And here lies the modern inversion. What society now mislabels as indifference is often mastery. When a man doesn't chase, he isn't apathetic, he's focused. When he withdraws from chaos, he isn't cold. He's conserving energy for what matters. When he stays silent, it's not weakness. It's a test of who deserves his voice. Most men never reach this level because it requires letting go of the one addiction no one warns them about, the addiction to reaction, the dopamine rush of responding, proving, correcting, defending. But once you stop feeding that cycle, once you learn to stand still and let the storm pass without losing form, you experience something rare, emotional sovereignty. And that sovereignty radiates. People begin to treat you differently. Women become more respectful, more curious. They approach with caution, not because you intimidate them, but because you don't conform to the predictable pattern of men they're used to. You're not governed by their rhythm, you set your own. There's a reason Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That's the Stoic foundation of attraction, leadership, and dominance. Because once you own your mind, no external force, not attention, not rejection, not chaos, can dictate your worth. In this state, peace stops being a refuge and becomes a weapon, not one of violence, but of control. The man who does not react cannot be manipulated. The man who needs nothing cannot be bribed. The man who moves only with intention cannot be predicted, and therefore cannot be controlled. That is the highest expression of masculine evolution. Stillness with strength, composure with capacity, peace with power. And in this world, where chaos masquerades as confidence and noise is mistaken for leadership, your calm becomes an act of quiet rebellion. Because when everyone else is screaming to be seen, the man who simply is, calm, aware, untouchable, becomes unforgettable. There comes a point when a man no longer asks, "What do I want?" but rather, "What disturbs my peace?" That question becomes his compass. He begins to measure life not by how much he accumulates, but by how little he allows to shake his center. The chase dissolves, the noise fades, and in the quiet that remains, something sacred begins to take form. Self-mastery. You start to see how everything was training. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every disappointment, all of it was sculpting the discipline to remain unbroken. The years weren't wasted. They were the forge. They taught you that peace is not gifted to the passive, but earned by the man who learns to stay calm in the face of loss. In that calm, you see reality for what it is. Not cruel, not kind, simply indifferent. The world doesn't bend for your emotions. It reflects them. And once you understand that, you stop reacting and start aligning. You move through life like water, adapting but never losing form. Women sense this instinctively. They can feel when a man has graduated from needing admiration to embodying presence. You no longer pursue them as symbols of worth. You engage them as reflections of your energy. You watch how they respond to your silence, your patience, your stillness, not to judge them, but to understand the rhythm of human nature. You've learned that attraction isn't about strategy, it's about state. When your state is stable, she feels safe. When it's grounded, she feels drawn. And when it's sovereign, when you no longer need her attention to validate your identity, she feels something deeper than attraction. She feels reverence, because peace has a sound, and she can hear it in your presence. It's the tone of a man who could leave, but chooses to stay. The quiet conviction of someone who doesn't chase love because he already lives in alignment with it. That steadiness is rare. It creates contrast, and contrast is what captures attention. Most men seek to impress. You've learned to express nothing, not because you're hiding, but because you understand that energy speaks louder than words. Your actions are no longer reactions, they're declarations of who you've become. The restraint in your decisions tells her everything she needs to know. You begin to see that peace is not the end of the journey, it's the throne from which you live it. From that throne, you observe the same world that once consumed you, but through different eyes. You don't need to dominate it, you simply navigate it with precision. Every word becomes intentional, every move deliberate. The chaos that once pulled you apart now fuels your composure. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And you've learned to dye your thoughts in calm. No gossip, no comparison, no need to win arguments. Because you've already won the only battle that mattered, the one within. Even temptation changes meaning now. What once lured you no longer reaches you. The smile, the glance, the provocation, they no longer stir reaction, because you no longer chase sensation, you chase alignment. You've understood that desire without direction is slavery, and peace without discipline is illusion. So you guard your peace like a kingdom. You let only what strengthens you pass through your gates. You don't run from emotion. You observe it until it reveals its truth. And that observation becomes your superpower, because the man who can sit with discomfort without breaking becomes indestructible. The world still offers chaos, but you no longer take the bait. You move with intention, love without attachment, and act without expectation. Your boundaries are silent, but absolute. And the respect that follows isn't demanded. It's felt. Women sense the shift long before they can explain it. They feel that your energy no longer orbits around them, that your attention is a choice, not a need. That choice carries weight. It creates the subtle tension that keeps attraction alive, not through games but through gravity, because real attraction isn't built on effort, it's built on essence. You no longer need to be louder, richer, or more visible. You just need to remain unshaken. That stillness, that quiet refusal to be moved by anything external, becomes your signature. And in that stillness, something profound happens. You rediscover joy. Not the fleeting kind born from validation, but the steady kind born from alignment. You wake up in peace, not because life is perfect, but because you no longer expect it to be. You no longer chase meaning. You create it through presence, discipline, and acceptance. This is the redefinition of masculinity. Not dominance over others, but dominion over self. Not control through fear, but influence through calm. Not withdrawal from life, but mastery within it. And when you reach that state, you finally understand what all the ancient philosophers meant when they spoke of freedom. It isn't the absence of restraint, it's the wisdom to choose what deserves your energy. Because the man who protects his peace is not escaping the world. He's building one inside himself that the world cannot shake. And when you live from that place, calm, sovereign, complete, you realize that peace was never the reward for walking away from the chase. It was the power you were searching for all along.